Hello, welcome to the second episode of Panning Leadership. Today, Jason Leger is going to talk about something that he has termed the defensive posture. It's a trap that companies can fall into where they begin to be more defensive than innovative, and it can really cause some problems. So join me and let's listen to what Jason has to say.
Thanks for joining me on Panning Leadership. This is Jason Leger. We're going to be talking a little bit today about some things we can do to make sure we don't fall into the trap that some businesses and some leaders do. And that trap I've labeled as a defensive posture. A defensive posture is where someone has an improper imbalance of what they see as a risk, and so they develop a defensive posture, and that winds up taking away from some of the positive things that maybe they were doing, maybe some of the secret sauce that was actually helping their company. That could be something around innovation, that could be customer care. But because of some type of defensive posture, they've now put some things in place where those things have diminished. And so they wind up having, instead of a healthy look at risk and making healthy decisions of how to deal with that risk, now they have almost an entirely defensive posture where their customers, their employees, the culture is now suffering greatly. And that company really starts to change from what it was when it was successful to something completely different via some type of risk assessment based on the market downturn, some other type of financial situation, maybe a change in leadership. But nevertheless, the entire vision and outlook now seems to have some type of negative spin to it. And that's because of this defensive posture, which is adopted to really, operate the business from a risk perspective instead of an innovative or competitive perspective. To give an example of this, let's look at the sports world. I think we've all seen, especially during March Madness, during basketball, or maybe your favorite football team, where a team that was known to be inferior, whether that was their resources, their people, their skills, their track record, whatever it was, winds up beating a really, really good team. And what do we always attribute that to? We always say, well, they had more heart, or well, they wanted it more. And there's still people left wondering how in the world can this particular team made up of these particular people with their limited skill, resources, draft picks, whatever they had, actually beat a team that was categorically supposed to win at every level. And we know what the answer to that is. One team believed, one team put things into place to go for it. They stretched a little bit beyond what they thought their limits were. And the other team had, most likely, a defensive posture. They thought, we can play it safe, we can simply run the score up to this point and then just make sure we don't make a mistake. But at some point, the offensive posture of that team was turned down, maybe even turned off. We've heard in sports, the best offense is a good defense. Well, in business, I don't know that that's the case, because someone has offense ready to go. They are ready to step into that void if you step out of the marketplace. If you suddenly are not offering something, if you are not out there with the customer, if suddenly you have dialed back, if you have scaled back, if you have removed yourself in some way because of some defensive posture, somebody is willing to step into that void and make it happen. Somebody's willing to go beyond their means of what they should be able to do, what they've ever done before, and they will step into that void and they will take that market share. They will get that customer. They will develop that product. And so I think the sports illustration works really, really well because it's literally something we've seen over and over. And so the question really becomes, how do we deal with the real risk that we see in a market downturn? Oil and gas is a good example of this. There are ups and there are downs, while still maintaining a competitive edge, whether that be innovation, whether that be the product. But at the same time, thinking about cost out concerns, other type of expenditures, without having an imbalance towards the defensive posture. And so my challenge for you today is, think about the decisions that you're making right now. Are you in balance? Are you properly addressing the risk while still making sure that your budget, focus, vision is focused on those things that have made you successful to this point? And also realize someone is waiting for you to take a step backwards so they can take a step forwards. So be very mindful of the type of posture that you have in your company, the type of culture. Has that culture shifted in a negative way, in a defensive way? Or are people built up to where they believe they can win, even in spite of the particular conditions? There's always going to be that sports team every year that upsets some type of tournament bracket because they believed they could win. They had a plan and a vision. And that is the exact same thing that you need to see from your people, from your leadership, and from your team. But that only happens when leadership has a proper balance of how they're handling the current risk, but also how they recognize what makes them special, and they continue to leverage in an innovative or in a positive direction. Have a great day.
Thank you, Jason, for that insight. And the challenge, I think, is a good one to make sure that we're not falling into that trap, to really be self-examining. It makes me think of Blockbuster, that, the idea that he said about company waiting in the wings to take over where you're at. If you're not willing to move forward, if you start to stop being at that edge, there is always someone ready to knock you off. And, look at Netflix today. All of their competitors are ready to move in. There's several different streaming services coming out. So Netflix is constantly having to spend money and spend energy and reinvent itself in order to stay where it's at, much less move forward in the game. So if you have any thoughts or questions, please email us at panning@sharpstonegroup.com. That's panning@sharpstonegroup.com. And feel free to check out sharpstonegroup.com for any of the needs that you might have. We're here to sharpen everything. Thank you.